All right, today we're going to talk about what it means when an ex tells you that you deserve better than them. And if you stick around until the end of this video, not only am I going to answer that exact question on whether or not they actually mean it, but I'm also going to make a very strong assertion on what I think is going on in their head, and I'm going to back it up using philosophy, psychology, and even a real life example in our private Facebook support group. Hey there, real quick, I want to say that if you're new to this YouTube channel or you're trying to figure out what you should be doing to get your ex back and you're trying to learn if you even have a chance in your specific circumstance, probably the smartest thing for you to do is actually stop by our website, www.exboyfriendrecovery.com, or take our Ex Recovery Chances quiz that can be found at exboyfriendrecovery.com. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, taking that free quiz is super easy to do. All you have to simply do is look in the description link below this YouTube video and click on the link you see there. It will take you directly to the quiz where you can fill it out and get an easy answer on what you should be doing going forward and overall what your chances look like in your specific situation. All right, so let's get you back to the video. So let's answer the big question right off the bat. When an ex sits there after a breakup or even during a breakup and say, "Baby, you deserve better than me. You are so much better for someone else.
You deserve someone better. You deserve someone as good as you."
Do they mean it? Are they just saying that because they think it sounds nice? Well, in my opinion, after my decades worth of experience and research and doing this pretty much every single weekday of every single week, I don't think your ex is being selfless when they say this. I actually am going to argue the exact opposite. So no, I don't think they mean you deserve better than them at all. And if you really think about it, having an ex sit there and say, "You deserve better than me," is a really fancy way of saying, "It's not you, it's me." They're just being very specific about those "it's me" reasons. Now, I know some of you are going to sit there and say, "But my ex seems so authentic when they say it." And I'm actually going to back up my reasoning using psychology a little bit later, but let's first answer why they're actually saying this, or what is behind them saying this. And ultimately, I think we have to turn to philosophy or a very big philosophical discussion to understand if they mean what they say or not. Basically, having an ex sit there and assert that you deserve better than them is the ultimate selfless move, if you really think about it. So what we're going to be looking at through philosophy is this concept of selflessness versus selfishness. Though philosophers often use different terms to describe these very basic concepts. So the big philosophical discussion that goes on between philosophers is this concept of altruism versus a psychological egoist. Now, what are those things? Well, altruism basically is the belief in or practice of disinterested and selfless concern for the well-being of others. Basically, you have someone whose every action is selfless. They don't think or see anything in it for themselves, and they act a certain way. Now, the flip side, the psychological egoist, is the exact opposite. This is the kind of person that says that all of our actions are always self-interested. And we can even kind of dig deeper and talk about the hedonistic psychological egoism. And this is kind of a view that was started in the 18th century by philosopher Jeremy Bentham, which basically states that people only ever act in ways which they take to maximize their pleasure and minimize their pain. Now, we're gonna have a fun thought experiment. We're gonna use a real life scenario that I was in and look and see if I was altruistic or selfish about it, or egoistic. Okay, so here's the setup. I was driving home from getting a family portrait with my wife and daughter for Christmas. So we're driving home and we hit a stoplight. You know, in our area, we were in a pretty packed area close to the city where we live, and there was someone who was holding a sign. Now, usually you would think this is a homeless person, but their sign basically said, "My child has cancer." And she's going around trying to get enough money to pay the bills for her child's chemotherapy. I think I gave her like $20 or something. Now let me ask you, was that a self-interested act or an altruistic act? On the surface, it may appear altruistic. It may appear like, wow, Chris is extremely selfless. Look at that, he gave his own money to this person. But when I really think about it, I disagree. You see, the truth is, the moment I read the sign, I felt sadness, I felt sorrow, and I felt very bad for her situation because I have a daughter myself, about probably the same age that that child who's getting that chemotherapy is going through. I was filled with this sad feeling, and I knew the only way to make myself feel better or feel like I was helping her out was to give her money. So technically not an altruistic act if you think about it. And you can kind of apply this to every single factor of your life. Now, I promise I'm getting to a point here, but let's kind of talk about the egoist type of view. Now, the egoist would sit there and say, there is no possible way in which you can be selfless. And I would actually disagree. I think altruism is in existence. It's just extremely rare. I mean, how do you describe someone who sacrifices their own life for a stranger? I would say that's a pretty altruistic act. So the point of me going through this thought experiment is to actually show you how rare altruism actually is in our world if you really sit down and think about it. And this allows us to come full circle. What we're dealing with here is an ex who is basically saying the ultimate altruistic thing. I am breaking up with you because you deserve better than me. But in relationships, which we have found to be incredibly self-interested, usually people are always looking for the best deal for themselves in a relationship partner. It's even more self-interested when you look at a breakup. Usually you're breaking up with someone because you're saying, on the general terms of the breakup, I think I can do better than you. So having an ex say that doesn't really track with sort of the reality of the situation. But this kind of builds up another interesting concept. We've noticed that a lot of people who end up sitting there and saying, you deserve better than me, are actually kind of reframing the situation to make themselves look like the hero. This kind of brings up this concept of a hero complex. So one of our biggest things that we've noticed, especially from men, is men tend to like to victimize themselves even if they're the ones who are breaking up with you. They also like to play themselves as the hero. So it really taps into this hero complex idea where they are basically sitting there and saying, you know what, I'm gonna break up with you because you deserve better than me and you're going to find happiness. But that's also a little self-interested because ultimately, they're just wanting to feel like a hero. Now, I know many of you are going to sit there and say, like I talked about at the beginning of this video, but when my ex says it, it seems so authentic. And there's a couple of things I'd like to talk about now. First, I'm gonna read you a real life example from our private Facebook support group where the ex literally just said this to her after a breakup. And then I'm gonna break it down using psychology to explain what I think is going on there. So our client basically posts on our private Facebook support group, today is day 9 of a 45-day no contact rule. And although he hurt me due to his depression, I can't help but think that's the only reason we are apart. Then I have to keep telling myself that if he truly wanted me, he'd reach out in the right way. It's so hard for me not to tell him I love him and know he's struggling, but I know he needs time to himself to figure life out. Has anyone here been through something like this? They have a depressed ERP ex who said, I'm broken and you deserve better and I keep messing it up with us, who eventually realized they were stupid for letting you go? All right, so this is an exciting one to break down because there's a lot of factors going on here. You have an ex who is clearly depressed and the ex-girlfriend who believes the ex is depressed. Now, the ex who's depressed almost has this self-fulfilling prophecy where he's like, well, I'm depressed and I'm sad, so I am going to break up with you because you can do better than me. You shouldn't have to be with someone who's just like a ball and chain dragging you down with their depression. Here's what I'm arguing. What I'm arguing is, while that may be true, what's a lot more likely is the fact that they are depressed. I'm not saying that's not the fact here. What I'm saying is it will probably make them more depressed if they feel like the bad guy for breaking up with you. So to save face and kind of tap into the victim mentality, which usually depressed people tend to have a big victim mentality, not to say that depression is a bad thing. I've been depressed in my life. I know what it's like. But they tend to kind of have this self-fulfilling prophecy and just dig themselves deeper and deeper. And I think that's what's happening here. And I think we can actually look at Carl Jung's shadow concept as an example of what's really going on with an ex who says, you deserve better. Because why is it that it sounds so authentic coming from our exes? Well, let's talk about Carl Jung's shadow theory. So Carl Jung was basically one of Sigmund Freud's very best friends in the entire world until Sigmund Freud got a little jealous in real life and they kind of had their own little bro breakup. But Carl Jung was a big believer in this concept of the shadow. Now, what is the shadow? Well, simply put, the shadow is the dark side of our personality because it consists chiefly of primitive, negative human emotions and impulses like rage, envy, greed, selfishness, desire, and the striving for power. Now, a lot of us go through life without ever understanding this concept or hearing about this concept because it is kind of a really interesting merge between psychology and philosophy. But the best way I can explain the shadow to you is by using myself as the personal guinea pig for you. So the other day I was driving home and there's someone walking down the street. It was just this guy. He looked extremely confident and I just didn't like him. There's something about him I didn't like. And I looked at that guy and I said, what a jerk. Or I didn't use those words. I used something a little bit more worse than that. And my wife was like, what has gotten into you? And this is when I caught myself and realized, why am I saying that? Why am I doing that to that person? I don't know this person. I've never met this person. They could be the nicest person in the world. But the truth is, the way that that person was walking, I think I was jealous of the fact that they were in very good shape. I wasn't feeling very good about myself that day, and I projected my shadow onto that person. Now, ultimately, your shadow is kind of this unconscious negative beliefs that end up cropping up to the surface every once in a while. And if you leave your shadow unchecked, it will just end up taking control if things go really haywire. Now, the ultimate thing that most people say is, well, I should eliminate my shadow. But the truth is, you can't ever eliminate your shadow. Instead, what you should always be aiming to do is integrating your shadow, accepting the fact that you are capable of these negative thoughts about people. You are capable of not being altruistic, which is a big theme of this video. Now, to make matters even more complicated, for people who don't really like this concept of a shadow or even feeling like they have a shadow, what they do is they create a persona. And a persona is basically in every single public arena, we present an exaggerated version of ourselves, which we hope will make an impression, usually a good impression. Now, the character we display in our occupation is not the same that we display at home. When alone, we have no one to impress, but in public, we wear a mask, a persona, so that we might impose a desirable image of ourselves onto others. And this concept might fully explain why your ex says that you deserve better than them. This is their persona talking. They don't think what they're saying. They're just saying what they think you want to hear. You deserve better than me. It's not you, it's me. And the hard truth is, in their minds, they think they can do better than you. Maybe they are depressed, like in the example I gave. Maybe they are driven by that depression, but even in circumstances like that, I would argue they are putting up a persona. Maybe they have believed themselves that you can do better than them, but really I think what it is they're worried that if they stay with you, you'll leave them for someone else, especially in that circumstance that I was just talking about. Now, this is all stuff that is based in philosophy, based in psychology, been proven to work when we actually test it out in the field. So the next time an ex says that they think you can do better than them, don't believe them. That's not what they really think. Now, one final thing of note. Just because an ex says that you can do better than them doesn't mean you have a 0 chance of getting them back. That's not what this video is about at all. This video is about explaining what's going on in their mind. And sometimes it's a little scary to go into our ex's mind because your ex doesn't think very highly of you at the point of breakup. We've seen multiple times exes say this to our clients and then get back with them. We've seen exes say worse things like, I didn't ever love you, or you're never gonna get back together. You need to stop thinking about us trying to get back together only to come back again. So you need to kind of understand that usually they're saying these type of things in emotional moments themselves. Sometimes they say it because they think it's what you want to hear, like I just said. But it's important for you not to give up hope if your ex says this to you. I don't want this video to be like this depressing sort of treatise on why they don't mean what they say. But ultimately, if you wanted to know what's going on in your ex's brain when they say this, they don't mean it. They usually think they can do better than you, or they're afraid because they don't want to be broken up with and be hurt. So it's kind of a self-protection type of a situation. All right, that's gonna do it for this video. So one question, in the comments, let me know if you've ever had an ex who said something or some variation of "you deserve better than me" to you, so that we can actually hear some of your stories, and maybe you can start applying some of the concepts I talked about with regard to altruism versus self-interest, or the Carl Jung shadow and the persona onto your ex to see what was really going on there, and let us know in the comments what you come up with. Also, if you haven't liked, commented, or subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do that. And the final order of business is, if you haven't taken that Ex Recovery Chances quiz that we talked about in this video, it's a really good idea to do so. The quiz is very simple to take. If you're watching this on YouTube, all you gotta do is simply look in the description below and click the link you see there. It will take you directly to the quiz. It's a free quiz, should take you 2 minutes, and it'll give you kind of a general idea of where your starting point is if you want to try to get your ex back, or even if you want to get over your ex. All right, so again, description link, click the link you see there, take the quiz, and I'll see you guys next time.